Hi guys, welcome to today's video. Today we are talking about that and buying one. That is a 1992 Nissan 300ZX twin turbo. So from the off I have bad news for you. This car is 30 years old. So whichever one you buy, it's going to be a project. But the question is, how much of a project? I'm going to show you what to look out for when buying one of these. So under the hood, this car here is a twin turbo. You can tell it is a twin turbo because it has got the standard intake hoses which come from your air filter, which you will have whether it's a twin turbo or an NA. However, you also have these extra hoses which will come out of the turbos and they go into an intercooler, which will be either here either side, or if you've got an aftermarket front mount will be here, and then they go back up into the boost hose here to add the turbo boost. Now if you are buying a twin turbo, do open the bonnet and do have a look to check that these are here, because there are people what will try and sell you an NA and tell you it's a twin turbo. The other telltale sign that it's a twin turbo is you will have down here a boost gauge under your Speedo, which on an NA you do not get this. So if you are looking at a twin turbo car, one thing to do is when you go to look at it, take somebody along with you, get them to drive behind you and put your foot down, and if you see black or grey smoke coming out of the exhaust, that probably means that your turbos will need changing, or it could be other things, like it could be your oil stem seals, your piston rings, but it's quite likely it is your turbo. So remember to take somebody with you, get them to drive behind you, give it a bit of power and see if any smoke comes out the back. Another thing on the twin turbo car which you don't get on the NA is you get ICAS, which is a rear wheel steering. And on the twin turbo what you'll have, which I don't have because mine has been deleted, next to the power steering reservoir there will be some gubbins here which sends two lines of power steering fluid down to the rear rack. It will go down two pipes underneath here, around here, and then it will go round to the rear of the car, and there will be a rear rack just behind the diff which is for the rear wheel steering. Now the problem with this is these tend to seize up and then you have problems. So but what you can do is you can buy a delete kit from the Z Centre or other places, which is basically a complete solid bar which bolts on the back, but you will need this professionally fit in because to get the ball joints out it is a right pain in the backside. And you remove that and fit that rack, and you remove the gubbins, and there is a bypass hose what goes on here as well, which then deletes the ICAS system, and then you've got a solid rear end like you have on an NA car. Now when you buy a Nissan 300ZX, whether that be an NA or a twin turbo, most of them come with a misfire for free. And the reason for this is obviously it's a 30-year-old car. It has 6 core packs which are here. These can fail, the plastic gets brittle and it cracks around the connectors, or the core pack fails. These connectors on the loom as well, they get corroded and then they get a bad connection, bits fall off them like this one as well. You can get breaks in the wiring loom, and also you have, which is very hard to see, right down there is the injectors, and the injector connectors, they can corrode as well. But on up until 1992 I believe they fitted an older style injector, which I have in this car, which was prone to the ethanol in the fuel. So you shouldn't use the E10 in these cars, full stop. The ethanol in the fuel used to rot them, the electrics inside them, and then they would fail. And if you need to change injectors on this car, you need to take off the plenum, which is all of this, and that is a right pain in the backside. But when you take it off, you can delete the EGR valve, which is down here. Mine is deleted, and some other systems as well, some hoses underneath what can be deleted. This was already done on my car when I got it, but if you do go on YouTube, look up Zebruvs, they do a video on how to delete all the deletes on the plenum underneath, the hoses, the EGR, the PCV valves, and the AIV, which is They only fitted it, I believe, up to 92. In fact I think it's just on the 92 cars. And you get like a plastic box in here. There's a nose what comes out of the exhaust, goes into here, then goes around there and shoves some of the exhaust gases back into the system. Apparently it's good for the environment, and then they pump into there, but obviously it's not good for your car. So what you can do is delete that. So if you go on YouTube, look for a video on how to delete that if you do come with that system and you are taking your plenum off. Now it goes without saying, like you do with any car, check your coolant level. The dip for it is down here. The bottle's down here as well. The bottles are plastic bottle. They get brittle and they do crack as well. Radiators here, obviously check that that's not leaking. And then check your oil as well. Your dipstick is right hidden down here. It's an absolute pain in the backside to get that in and out as well. This here is the PTU. This should be on here, but mine wasn't on here and the bolts are missing. But a lot of people do relocate that in the nose panel. There's a steel bar in here underneath the bumper, and you can fix it to the bar, and then you can take the cable off it and run it through here. It's a pain in the backside. I'm taking the bumper off in the nearest future, so I will be fitting that down here. And the reason people do that is it does get warm here, which can be a problem. The other thing on this car here, which is a common failure on these, is these temperature sensors. You can buy the temperature sensor from the Z Centre. They do tend to fail, and they will give you a code 13 if you do the ECU test, which I will show you later in the video. And also the actual connectors can fail. Mine did fail. You used to be able to get these from the Z Centre. You can't now. You can get them from the USA, but obviously it's a pain in the backside getting it here. So I've done some creative wiring at the moment to get that working. The actual throttle on this is old school. It's got a cable what pulls that, and that opens up the throttle bodies either side here, which lets the air in. Is down in here where the air filter is, there's the airflow meter, which tells the ECU how much air is coming in, which then it works out the fueling ratio. But also you have this as well, which is the throttle position sensor, which will sense how far open the throttle bodies are when you put your foot down. And this can sometimes either adjusting or fail, and if this is wrong, or this down here, the airflow meter is wrong, you can get problems with your fueling, and that can be another problem on these. It's quite common. And if the temperature sensor fails, or the connector fails on it, the car will run permanently rich, because it will basically think that the car is cold, and it will add extra fuel like it does with an old car with choke. And then when your car warms up, you'll end up with misfiring because you'll be running too much fuel, and that will end up coating your spark plugs. And just down here, right down there, you've got your turbos and your downpipes, and you have your lambda sensors, O2 sensors. You don't have any after the cat like you do on a modern car, where the modern cars have an after cat which checks your cat's working. You just have the pre-cat ones. These do adjust your fuel trim on a fuel injection engine, so they are quite important. However, mine have failed, and to replace them, well, this one here you can't get to it, but to replace the one down here, it's there, right down there. So you've got the battery tray that's welded in there, the firewall there, and the engine there, so you can't get it out without taking the downpipe off. So I've got some more downpipes to go on in the future with some new O2 sensors in them. But at the moment, if we go back round here, they are disconnected. If you do the ECU test, which I will show you in a bit, there is another test what is part of that test where you can test the O2 sensors. Obviously mine won't work, but I will show you how to do that as well. Now the next thing is, these cars come with a T-top, which is a removable Tasha top. So this all comes out here. You can take that off, put it in the boot in the bag if you've still got the bag, which I don't have. These are quite common for leaking, and there's a lot of people what tell you to ask the previous owner whether it leaks or not. Well, they're going to lie to you, but it will leak anyway because they're a bad design. First of all, you've got a gutter which runs all the way around inside here, and what you've got is you've got a drain hole here and you've got a drain hole here. Now this drain hole, it's got a hose what's connected to it, what runs down inside here, basically underneath this bit of trim, and it goes down here, and there's a little piece of rubber behind there what flicks it out behind the wing, and it drains out the bottom of the car. Over time this pipe shrinks, and then it pops off the little connector, and then it's not chucking it out inside the car, then it's chucking it out in here, which then goes into your sill and it rots out your sill. This happened on my car, and obviously I ended up having to put new sills on it, outer sills here. You can get the outer sills from the Z Centre, which come back to about here, and I had to buy those, have them welded in, and I had to do a repair to the pinch weld, which is right underneath the car as well. So check your pinch welds, because that's commonly rots out, and a bit of the floor pan as well. Because of that, I've been leaking, and because the car over time probably sat on grass in the damp or whatever. So obviously that is one reason why your sills rot out on these cars. The other reason why your sill rots out is you've got one here as well which runs down the B pillar. So that runs down inside here, and then it goes, there's a little steel flange inside the sill down here, inside the inner sill, and the pipe goes onto that, and then that goes into a little chamber, like a little gutter under the car, and it goes out and comes out underneath the car. However, the flange rots with time, and then the hose sits there dangling in the inner sill for about 30 odd years, filling the inner sill up with water, and then it rots out, and then you need to replace this bit here on the outer sill, because that'll happen, but the inner sill will go first. And what you have is a sill return, which right under here, which you probably can't see very well, there's like a stabilizer bracket what comes off the subframe, and just before that you've got a bit of a sill return, and that tends to rot out because that's directly where that is. And you'll also find this bit here at the back here rots out as well. So obviously I've had to redo all that, and then as a preventative measure after I've redone all that, if you actually take the seats out, just underneath here there is some tape what you can take up, and you can actually inspect the gutter. So why Nissan decided to go onto a flange over here and then roll into the gutter, I've no idea. But what I've done is there's a seat belt mechanism here, and there's space either side of it. So I've taken a new hose, come down, come past that, and I've come out underneath this and gone straight out the bottom of the car through the where the inspection hole goes into the drain. So I've eliminated any more rust or rot for that reason. The other common place for rust on these is on the rear arches or inside here, because it gets inside here and then it works its way out, and that rusts out. As I said, down there rusts out as well. So but you can't buy, you could buy this panel for this side, the whole thing, from Z Centre, but you can't buy the other side because Nissan don't make that anymore. But what you can do is, there's a guy from Birmingham who's on pretty much most of the 300ZX Facebook groups. He breaks 300ZXs, so what you can do is you can buy a piece from another car like I did, pretty much most of that, which was all rust free, and I had that welded in on both sides. And then on this side you tend to get the same thing, and it tends to go here. So on this, mine have gone here, so obviously I put a whole new panel in on this side of the car as well, and then I put the new sills, outer sills, repaired all the pinch weld, put a patch in the floor as well, and rebuilt what I need to do on the sill returns at the back here, and then I put a new panel on here. At the time you couldn't get this bit of sill, but you can at the moment from the Z Centre or from Iffy, who's on the 300ZX groups, but you couldn't at the time, so I had to make that and weld that in. So when I got this car, the boot was leaking, and a couple of reasons why the boot was leaking. The first one is the original spoiler was on there. They drilled the holes, but they hadn't put any sealant around them, so it drained into the holes and straight into the boot. And the other reason is this panel here, lights, centre panel of a light, that was non-existent. The previous owner fitted a panel in here, a fiberglass panel with some Ferrari lights, and it didn't fit and it wasn't sealed, so it was leaking. These here 99 spec lights from Z32 centre panel, these have got a sealant all round them, so it's fully sealed. This has got a gasket on behind here as well, so this is fully sealed, so this no longer leaks, so no longer get water in the boot. So being a 90s car, 30 odd years old, the Nissan 300ZX doesn't have OB2, it's got OB1. However, you don't need to connect into that to read fault codes, because this is a proper old school car. What you need is a couple of screwdrivers, a posi drive and a flathead. And then what you do is you pull back this carpet here, and there'll be a wooden panel. Now the reason you need the posi drive is it will have some screws in it, however mine doesn't. And then this piece of wood, yes, they did just give you a piece of plywood, will come out. And then what you've got down here is your ECU. And on the side of your ECU, right up here, there's a little screw right there, and there's a little LED here. Now what you need to do is you need to go and put your keys in your ignition. Which, like Blue Peter, is one I've made earlier. And you need to turn that 2 turns, but don't start the engine. And then you will see you've got your standard lights on the dashboard. And then if you go back round, get your flat-headed screwdriver, get down on the floor, find the little screw, which is very hard to find in the dark. You turn it fully one way, this way. And then you turn it fully the other way. See it, fully that way. And fully that way. And then what you'll see is the LED will flash. Alright, and it'll flash Morse code, it'll do slow ones and it'll do fast ones. If you go round to the dashboard, because that's a pain in the arse, and you look at the dashboard, you will see it's also flashes down here. Can't see it very well. The engine management light. So what you do is you count, you wait for it to stop, and you wait for it to do the fast ones. Then you wait for the slow ones, so it'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You wait for the fast one, 3, 4, 5. So we've got 5 slow ones, which is basically 50, because the slow ones equal 10. So 5 slow ones is 50. Then you've got 5 fast ones, and the fast ones are single units, so that is 5. So that code is 55. Now 55 means you've got no faults. That means that you've got no fault codes stored in your ECU. You may get some fault codes though. So say you had 1 slow one for 10, 3 fast ones for 3, that will be 13, and that will be your coolant temperature sensor. Now what it will do is it will do all the codes in sequence, and it will just continuously loop round until you exit this mode. So basically, if you've got more than one code, you'll read the code the 10s, the slow ones, and then the fast ones, the units, and then you read the next code and the next code until you end up getting the same code again, and then you know you've got all your codes, and then you can go on the interweb and you can find out what your fault codes were. Now the next thing what I was going to tell you is there is another test you could do now. If you start the engine now, right, this won't work on mine because I've got my O2 sensors are not connected, but this light will continue to flash, and if you keep the revs going at 2,500 RPM continuously, like so, what you should do is you should see that come on for 2 seconds and off for 2 seconds and on for 2 seconds and off for 2 seconds, and that means that your O2 sensor on the one side of the car is working perfectly fine. However, that's not going to work on my car because they're disconnected, because they don't work. And then what you can do is you go back down to your ECU, and while your engine's still running, and you turn your screw fully clockwise again and then fully anti-clockwise again, and then what will happen is you'll continue the same test, but you're now testing the O2 sensor on the opposite side of the car. Then all you need to do to come out of that mode is what you need to do now is you need to go round to your ECU, and get your screwdriver again, find your little doodah, which is right fiddly up here, pain in the backside. Turn it fully clockwise. As I said, right pain in the backside, especially when you try to hold the camera. So fully clockwise, and turn it again back fully anti-clockwise. Like so, and you'll see the LED is no longer flashing, it was just on. And if we go around here, you'll see that it's no longer flashing, it's just on, which it is on when you start before you start your engine anyway. In addition, you start your engine and that will go out, and basically that means you're now out of diagnostic mode. And also, if you had any fault codes, turning that screw fully clockwise and anti-clockwise after conducting the test, you've actually also deleted the codes. Now this is a test, you can take a couple of screwdrivers with you when you go to look at a car. In fact, I'd advise taking some sockets as well, 10 and 8mm, because sometimes the heads are rolled up, knackered on the screws which hold the board on, and then you can get them off with a socket instead, because they're kind of a socket and a screw at the same time. So this is a test you could basically do on site whilst you're looking at the car and see if there's any fault codes. And also it's a nice little bartering tool as well. If you've got fault codes and the person selling the car doesn't really know, you can say you've got fault codes and you're going to have to spend money on it. How much money are you going to knock off the car? So inside the car, this is a 30-year-old car, so you're going to have, this is quite common, the brackets here break and the trims go all manky and stuff. In fact, this T-top I actually got as a replacement T-top because the one I had got a lot of rust on it, because it's quite a common thing actually that these will get rusty either here or here, and sometimes these little plastic bits as well, they break off as well. That's quite common. So I got that T-top, I got a replacement from Iffy over at Birmingham, because I tried to weld it up and the metal's so thin you can't weld it. So obviously I'll just replace that. So that is one thing that happens. These internal trim bits, they do break. I do have the old one off the other T-top, which I'm going to transfer over at some point. The other thing is these interior lights here, there's only a little bolt that holds that on, and if you've had your headliner off, which I had for painting the car, you tend to break that because it's all brittle plastic. These here these tend to break like that. You can break these things here as well when these are taken off. That's quite common. The clock, if you ever find a 300ZX with a clock that works, you found a gold mine. These never work. The other thing what you've got on these is you've got the climate control here. There are several versions of this. On the earlier cars you get a manual one, so it's like got a proper little turny thing and a temperature thing on it, and you know, like an old style. But then they started putting these on, and what you got out there is you've got your ambient temperature, and there's a sensor for that in the front bumper. Now mine thinks at the moment it's 29 degrees outside. I can assure you it is not 29 degrees outside. It's somewhere like -1, right, because we're in the UK and it is January, right. And what happens when that's messing up, there's also sensor up here, and there's various sensors in here, and when you set this temperature here for your internal temperature, and what happens if your sensors are played up, it thinks the temperature in the car's different, so then the heater won't work if the actual sensor thinks that the car is warmer than it actually is. The other thing on this as well is you've got heater matrix which is down here. They do fail on these, and then they leak, and you get water down there and down there. Right, so that's one thing to check, is like if you've got any water down there. I peeled that carpet back and I thought I've got water down there, but it's actually just because when I painted the car, because I'd welded these, I painted all these and I clear coated it, and it's very shiny. So it's not water, it's just a very shiny clear coat what's been covered up by the carpet. But you know, check for water down there as well from the heater matrix either side of the car. You've got an aircon unit what's also behind there, but in the front of the car, down that side, down the bottom, is the aircon compressor. Now they fail quite often, and then you have to get a new one, which you have to get second hand, and then you have to get regassed. So, and it also, it's not good for your fuel economy and in your performance, so a lot of people just take them off because it's got its own belt. So basically mine is missing. So if you've had your aircon compressor removed, the way this thing works is it uses the cold air from the aircon and it uses the warm air from the heater matrix to mix the temperature like a mixer tap does. However, if you put it on auto and you push the econ is basically using just the temperature outside, the cold air outside, and the heater matrix, and not the aircon. So that is the way you run your heater if you don't have an aircon compressor. If you're looking for a leather interior and you're looking for a good one without this on, good luck. But if you are looking for a leather interior, that is on the UK car, so you'd have to buy a UK car, not a Jap import, to get yourself a leather interior. Another common thing on these, as well as the seats going around here, is the door cards tend to go, but you can recover that. Another thing, if you're going to ask, have you got kids, can I get them in my car? We'll just pull that up. Yeah, we'll just pull that up. Yes, you can, but you have to get a specific car seat, because you can focus it in the light. That will just go round the other side, I think. I've got, as you can tell, kids. Right, this is a Cybex Palace seat, and it's the B2 fix. It's got ISOFIX on it, but you don't need to use the ISOFIX because you can't use the ISOFIX on a 300ZX. So what you got is, you got this system here where it goes through here, it goes through here, and you can use it that way if they're over I believe 15 kg. But if they're between or under 15 kg, or they're between 15 and 18 kg, then you've also got this geezer here which goes on. It goes on a lot easier when you look what you're doing. So that goes on there, and then you pull your belt right through down there and fold up over there, and you can pull that up there, and so you now have a car seat in the back of your 300ZX. And the reason you need this seat and no other seat is because of these bucket seats here. most seats will not fit that contour and they will sit over here somewhere, or they will be raised up, but this seat here's got just the right curve on it to fit in there. I did make another video which made a bit better for fitting a child seat in the back of one of these, so please go and watch that. The other thing to bear in mind is in the UK for an MOT you do need to have a rear fog light, and it has to be mounted mainly to that side of the car, and it has to be red. Well, on the UK spec cars, the UK bumper has got fog lights in here. Mine is a UK car, but it's got a Japanese spec bumper on it, so it doesn't have that. And also I couldn't find the wiring in there for it, somebody removed it or whatever, so what I had to do is I had to basically wire in. So this side here is reversing lights, and I tapped it to this side and I put a red bulb in there, and I'll come off the main light, so it only works when the light is on. Run a cable down to the front of the car, put a little switch in here, which is why earthed over here, and then it's fed from the main light, and then it feeds back down here, and then it feeds into this light here. So this fog light works when I flick that switch and that light is on, which bear in mind, if you don't have a fog light on the back, you're going to have to do some kind of wiring to fit one of those. So back at the beginning of the video I did touch on the T-tops leaking. As I said, you've got this gutter around here, and these here are your drain holes. They can get blocked up as well, and if they get blocked up then obviously the gutter builds up and that can overflow, but these are not blocked up. But a lot of people say the reason that these leak is these rubber here. They say these rubber seals go, and then it leaks. Well, these rubber seals, they're very expensive. I think it's like something like £400 a side or something stupid like that. And unless it clearly looks like it's gone, which this doesn't, you get some kind of spray on it to just revitalise it. But that is not the reason, the main reason that it leaks. One of the main reasons why it'll probably leak is just basically a rubbish design. Because if you've got a car where you've got a sort of frameless window, if you take a modern car like I had an E92 BMW, what you had is you had a rubber one side and a rubber the other side, and a sensor in the door, so what you knew when you was opening and closing the door, and it would lower the window, pop it up inside there, and then it'll be sealed, and then when you open the door it'll pop it down and then pop it back up. Well, this is 30 years old, it doesn't do that. What this relies on is the window pressing against that rubber. Well, this window then needs to be very rigid, and obviously this is the fixing point. What you've got in the rails, you've got some little plastic rollers. They can become worn and loose, which can give your window a bit of wobble. Although I don't have that, there is some adjustment as well in how far up it goes, but generally if you're expecting that to seal by that pressing against that, with the pivot point being right down here and nothing coming down over here, it's gonna leak. So the question is not does the T-top leak, it's just how much does it leak. If it only leaks a little bit, you could live with it. If it leaks a lot, then you're gonna have to address the problem or buy a different car. So that was my video on things to look out for and things to expect when buying a Nissan 300ZX, whether that be an N8 or a twin turbo. Thank you for watching. If you found this helpful or useful, please share, like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.